Hey everybody.
Uh-oh.
It is dialogue choices.
We're back.
Is it? Does it have to be? We could just
I mean,
we could make it something else. We could be like, fuck it. This is we're doing let's tries now. We're just gonna play video games and not talk about them.
We're not
That's
set
just
up for that.
That's just a podcast.
All I
with
do is
visuals.
launch a game and hit stream to you guys. It's easy. Boom.
Oh,
Format
if
change.
you play it, I see.
Yeah. Playing small saga. Let's go.
Small Saga? That's a game?
Yeah.
I don't know games anymore.
It's like a JRPG style game where you play as little mice.
Oh, that's cute. Wait, it's JRPG. Maybe it sucks. Is it good?
I don't know. I haven't played it yet. That was the premise.
I mean, if it's mice, it can't be bad, right? Like you make literally Final Fantasy 11, but it's mice. It's a good game.
I primarily
statement.
knew about it because what Jerome Jacinto or Jeremy, I never checked how to pronounce his name. The guy that did the Ghost of a Tale art did art for the game leading up to its like release and announcement and whatnot. And so you get to see these tiny little like rats and mice and moles and squirrels, but they're using human devices as weapons. So one has just a lighter to use as a flamethrower. One of them has a switchblade, which is like guts sized, like an ultra great sword. One has a scalpel that they're using as a halberd, and the other one has a hollowed out pencil they're using as like a flute for a bard. And it's just like just inspired art direction. Just what a fantastic idea.
It is, it's like really fun imagination.
Yeah. Like, I've been waiting for that game to come out. I'll probably do a let's try the demo at some point.
Is that a rat or is that a mole?
The left one's a mole.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say he doesn't have ears.
I think the right one is a rat.
The back's obviously
he looks like a mat.
They're all rats.
No.
Rats just look different.
That's not what words mean. You need to. We live in a society, Colonel. You can't just fucking change what words are whenever you feel like it.
The lighter person is indeed a mole. I think that's the case.
We're all moles when you think about it. Huh?
Oh, there's a squirrel with a flute. That's a squirrel at the back.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what made me think that the one on the left is a mole. I was like, oh wait, that's a squirrel back there. Maybe that's a mole and not just a rat with missing its ears.
So you thought it was good to point out that there was a mole in the picture instead of the more obvious one, which is the squirrel.
Yeah, well, I figured.
I mean, I explained what all four of them were, and for some reason we're still catching up.
I think
I front-loaded the explanation.
You give us pictures of rats. We stop paying attention.
You just tune me out immediately and just start staring at the picture.
Look, listening is a sign of weakness. I don't listen.
Yep. We're apparently talking about Small Saga because Elden Ring came out and we can't talk about it really. But hi everybody, Elden Ring came out. Play it.
Yeah. I mean, you may want to wait a little bit. I saw
some serious hitches on your side, Andrew.
Yeah, I've been having so I've always had bad luck with From Software games on PC. That's just always just been life for me. I don't think I'm the norm, but I mean it is common knowledge that From Software PC ports are generally the worst versions of any of their games. So it's always I didn't
have any problems with Sekiro or Dark Souls 3.
I'm having huge issues with Sekiro.
Really?
Still,
I know Dark Souls 2 had a durability problem where the increased frame rate made your durability decay faster.
Yeah.
Did they ever fix that?
I have no idea.
No.
I remember you mentioned it a lot in your Let's Play.
I think Scholar of the First Sin ran at 60 frames per second on all platforms, so it just became everyone's problem at that point. Like it was intended to long
they made
or something.
It worse.
Yeah.
Oh crap.
It's
I
fine.
mean, it's
like,
parody.
It's parody. Yes.
I think it's fine to an extent. You just have to kind of live with it, you know. But so I would say with any AAA game, not just from software too, I would say give it like a month or two if you can avoid spoilers. Give it some time to get patches, because usually it will take a few months after like you crunch a team for them to have the motivation to go and fix the failures that they overlooked because they were too tired to keep their eyes open while they did their job. So
you say spoilers, but I watched. So I'm watching both of you guys' Let's Plays, and like from the intro cinematic, this is Dark Souls again. It's the same story. It's all the dragons.
No. Nobody means story when they say spoilers.
Yeah. We're talking
That's
about
what you're
boss
missing.
fights.
Yeah.
We're
Boss
talking
fights
like
also just what happens, just like what it does with the open world, and what the surprises are, and so on. There's all sorts of just like, oh fuck, I walked here and this happened. I went over that crest and just saw this landscape that was just an entire category of shit that I didn't even expect to see in this game. Like that is just, there's unveiling to happen and like NPCs to meet and things about how the structure works and so on. It's like how Bloodborne has like a massive spoiler midway through of just what happens with the world and so on. And it's like there's just all these different games, like obviously like at some point people need to be allowed to talk about them at all, but the game's out right now, so it's very limited what you can actually talk about with Elden Ring without just immediately being like, it's like how people were like, I've played this game for 20 hours and I thought I'd be safe watching your Let's Play, and then you immediately turned in the opposite direction and found a new dungeon with a new boss, and and then they're me like, I'll be back in 20 more hours. Because they're trying, because they want to watch the videos, but they also like immediately I start doing shit that is out of reach or whatever, because everyone explores differently. I've had a strange journey where like I kind of just kept running off in directions towards whatever the fuck got my attention, and then like 10 hours in came back to the starting zone and started like finding really basic things that would have been helpful to find at the beginning, like entire gameplay mechanics just waiting to be discovered.
I was gonna say I was playing. No.
Because apparently that's a thing.
He said level up mechanic.
Yeah,
I don't know how that works.
I saw somewhere that Elden Ring has a sort of a unintended hard mode for basically players that miss one important character early on. And they showed the important character in the thumbnail, but I didn't read because it's not. I had what I wanted. But I'm wondering if that happened to you. I need to pay attention again to your first episode.
Things happen.
Yeah, I don't really know.
Cagey with everything.
I just run. I just go whatever direction. Like I did the same thing Keith did. I was like, well, I don't know. That looks fun. Can't do that yet. I'm gonna go to the next thing, I guess, and just like keep walking in directions. I got stuck in a place for like, I think almost an hour, and I was like, I'm trapped here. I don't know how I got here. I don't know how to get out of here. I'm fucked, I guess. And like it's just it's a very weird experience compared to most Souls game where it's like you can't just stumble upon a place you cannot go kind of thing.
Well, Dark Souls 2 does that though. It's easy to get stuck in Dark Souls 2 if I remember correctly. I got stuck.
Yeah, but you're often stuck in areas where you're often stuck in an area in the sense of like you may not know how to get out, but you should probably be in that area. Like,
but I mean stuck as in I don't know how to advance, and I think I got stuck because
I mean at the beginning of Dark Souls 2 you have 4 different options.
Yeah, but but it was later in the game. I don't remember exactly why I got stuck. But for some reason I was under the impression that the Stones of Pharaoh's place had like a new passage somewhere because I didn't open all the little secret passages.
There's like an optional boss.
Yeah, I found that. But incidentally, those I have later figured out that all the Stones of Pharaohs in Dark Souls 2, in that particular level of the dwarves or whatever, those things are for multiplayer mechanics that are not explained in the game or online in anything that I saw. And apparently people just know. How did you know that, Keith? Because I found that from your Let's Play of the first game. In the first game, you're like, oh, people here do this and do that, and like you were playing when the game came out, so of course people were playing. So you got invaded by some dude or whatever, or dudette.
I mean, if you watched my playthrough of the first game, that would have been me and Andrew in 2011, with horrible mic and audio quality. And
I mean Dark Souls 2, not the first game. I say the first game, the first Dark Souls 2, because there's 2 of them.
No, the games are too old for me to be able to
remember.
Did you just say there's 2 Dark Souls? Oh, you mean the first Dark Souls 2? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you just said there's 2 Dark Souls. I'm like, sir, I have news for you.
No, I'm talking about specifically Dark Souls 2.
I can't recreate how I learned things. That was like 2014. I don't remember.
Also, there are two Dark Souls, by the way.
There are 2 Dark Souls, yeah.
Yeah, that's why it ends with an S.
Well, I
that's
meant
not how any of that.
I meant there's Dark Souls and there's the Dark Souls remastered or whatever.
Oh yeah, there's 2 Dark Souls 1s and 2 Dark Souls 2, I guess.
Yeah, there are 2 Dark Souls.
Just goofy, dumb nonsense.
Xbox
And they didn't make 2 Bloodborns, even though they should. There's 2 Demon Souls. They didn't make 2 Dark Souls 3 though. They could.
No. Although there are even more Dark Souls 1s and Dark Souls 3s if you count all of the fan campaigns where they like they redo the game kind of.
That doesn't count.
I don't know how extensive they are because I still haven't tried any of them yet.
I bet they're like super douchey all of the time. Like I bet that if there's one that says
it's full up its own ass, like it's about the difficulty. That's all that matters.
Yeah, this one is like, this is Dark Souls but easy and nice and good. And not that I'm saying Dark Souls is not good, but you know what I mean. And then you go and play it. It's the hardest one, just to be even more douchey. I bet all the mods are. All the nice people are making demakes instead. There's apparently already a demake for Elden Ring somewhere.
I mean, that can't be good.
Yeah.
It's been like 2 days.
So no, I think it's just in the works.
So at that point, they're just going entirely off of the hype of the concept because they can't even have had time to experience the game that fully yet.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Usually demakes are
idea
really minimal and disappointing. That there's usually not that much love into them. It's just like, wow, I did pixel graphics and did like, a game that existed back then with that graphic style, but I made it themed after the thing that people care about to get attention.
I took Dark Souls and gave it tank controls.
Whereas Bloodborne PSX is beautiful. It is just an experience. I don't know if you've played that yet, Andrew, but that is...
I've never even played Bloodborne.
It is a loving take on Bloodborne, but it's also just a lot as just being like a Souls game done in like the PS1 style with like the awkward controls and the jittering graphics and like loading zones between chunks of maps and everything like that. Like a fucking inventory screen that you scroll through via like the 3D items spinning in a big circle like Tomb Raider. Like it's so specific and it's like it's just a lot. It's a lot. That person had a real specific goal.
There's also a tiny detail that you didn't mention. In the menus, a lot of the letters or a lot of the text is white on a blue background, and that's like Final Fantasy VII, and a lot of PS1 games do that. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. And I always figured it was like something to do with like default styling for any sort of toolkit that games were made with, like if you make an application for Windows, you can use the Windows default XML style for window making, and it just uses the default window styling of Windows. So I thought it was something to do with PlayStation. So I asked her specifically, the author of on Twitter, the author of Bloodborne PSX, and apparently no, it's just the way they liked it, and I can't understand why they liked it. It looks horrible.
There's different ideas of what looks good or bad at different eras, but also like when you have at some point on older graphics, he just desperately wanted contrast because holy fuck, old TVs were just blurry and garbage.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe
like graphics couldn't really get better until TVs did because all the like it was like there's just Vaseline on the screen. Like it's so fucking blurry.
Wow. Excuse us for not having the technology to make flat lights on a
But the good,
or a flat, yeah, perfectly flat lights on a flat screen look like stupid cartoon characters.
but a
We're
lot of
busy
games
with
use
other
that.
things.
A lot of games use that to its advantage. Like especially pixel art games did that a lot with the dithering and stuff to add more colors or to
Yeah, the
remove
color blending
aliasing.
was intended. So playing things with sharp pixel graphics is actually kind of against the spirit of retro graphics sometimes, because
Yeah,
the whole point was that they were supposed to like actually look like a gradient because all the graphics were blurrier.
yeah. I
Which is, I
definitely
don't know,
remember.
I wouldn't say that's ideal. I would say that is a creation from a limitation, and I think that, I don't know, I count that as a negative. Like, you shouldn't be, you should never make something that can only work on a very specific setup.
Well, what I mean is
that was at the
it's-
time just the only setup that existed. It wasn't like
Yeah,
they had
but-
to like,
well,
you got to buy
yeah,
this
but-
specific thing. It's like, it's just what technology was.
what I
that's
mean
what I'm
to say
saying. Is
that
like building. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying, like, if you play old games now, if you don't have the same setup as before, they will look worse than they did back then. Like, obviously, what Andrew is saying is true. Like, if you can make it better, make it better. It's not, I'm not pining for back in the day they could blend the colors. No, our modern day screens reproduce colors like nothing else we have ever done. It's incredible. It's amazing. But the thing is that we would go back and you hook up a PS1 to a LCD and it looks terrible because it's just not made for that. you need a CRT. I remember when I hooked up my Sega Saturn to a more modern CRT, because I played my Sega Saturn through a coaxial cable because my TV in the living room didn't have SCART.
We don't have S video. Come on, man. What the fuck?
Yeah, it was just a really
Clearly.
old TV, and I still have it. It's not working, but I still have it. And so
TV?
basically, I played. Yeah, I still have that TV. Not using.
Why?
Because it's enormous and it's in a room that's not used, so it's just over there, forgotten and accumulating dust. So that TV, basically, I played the games there and whatever, and that was that. And then when I hooked it up to the kitchen TV, which was smaller but had SCART and was newer, I was like, wow, the games look so much better. Now I don't remember exactly if it was just because it was smaller, so I couldn't see all the things, but I'm pretty sure the colors were just better, and it makes sense that it would, because SCART is actually really advanced for in comparison to things like RGB and white composite. Yeah, SCART is pretty decent. So yeah, of course, anything to do with coaxial cable is always going to look terrible.
I just think it's really absurd that they didn't build a Super Nintendo with an HDMI port. They had plenty of
You
time.
gotta get the Retron,
I have the Retron, and it's,
even though it just runs emulation anyway.
yeah, it's just an emulator, but in a box, which is no different from Nintendo emulation, which is like that little SNES thing that they came out with, which is just emulation in a box.
Yeah.
It's.
I keep hearing the emulation's really bad for the 64 on
I would
Switch.
bet it's because they keep redoing it for some reason. They don't just they didn't just copy and paste the one from the Wii, and the Wii, I guess technically it's the Wii, and then the Wii U copied the one from the Wii, which is why it was so good.
I thought the Wii U. I kept hearing the Wii U emulation was also really bad for 64. Like Majora's Mask is just a mess or something.
Oh, there were some games that it's not that Majora's Mask was a mess. It's that Majora's Mask is that the N64 was a mess, and so it didn't run very well at times, especially for games like Majora's Mask, which were really good and well-made games, but they kind of were a little too well-made for their time. So the N64 would sometimes struggle to run them, which it would have like frame drops basically. And modern emulators don't have frame drops because they're running on modern hardware. And so Majora's Mask would actually, like, cutscenes would end faster than music would end, because when they were testing the game on the N64, it would lag. So they would make the music accommodate for the lag. But on modern systems, it doesn't lag anymore. So the music would just not end when the cutscene ended, because you're like, or the cutscene would end before the music ended, because you're like, well, we didn't have to like stop and load. And like cutscenes weren't pre-rendered, like they're not pre-rendered. They just say like we're gonna play a thing that's happening in X amount of time, right? And so then I don't know. There was like a really good Twitter thread about this explaining how like in the Switch, like the Switch version fixed Majora's Mask. They went back and actually added the lag to the Majora's Mask N64 emulator, so that way the cutscenes actually play correctly now. But it's like this weird, the way that they set up cutscenes in the N64 made it so you unlike just playing an MP4 like we do now. Because it was like in game, it accommodated the lag in the N64, and so yeah, obviously the Wii didn't care about this, and so a lot of N64 games didn't have that, and so some of them were like kind of bunk because of it. But stuff like Perfect Dark was perfectly fine, or GoldenEye, because they didn't rely on that. So it was just like, oh, this is a much smoother and nice experience. Like when you play those games.
Perfect Dark was designed for the expansion pack.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, there's just like it's just fun to see those little things. But yeah, it's not that it was bad. It's just that, again, man, you really made a shitty N64. Why is it frame skip? And you're like, well, that's the best
I'm
we
basically
could do.
just half remembering narrow videos or something. But like, I think there's a bunch of stuff about like missing effects and like Silent Hill HD level of like all these fog effects don't render and stuff like that. Like there's supposed to be like a bunch of major problems with like Nintendo 60 with Majora's Mask on Switch and stuff.
Oh, I've never seen that. So I mean,
a bunch of like added input delay on all the Mario games and so on, and like just like all of them are supposed to be just kind of a disaster. But for people that like actually fine tooth that shit, because I don't fucking know, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's obviously.
I just play a game and then everyone tells me that's the wrong one. What have you done? This is Crimes.
Perfect. I love Crimes.
No matter what version of a classic game I play, I will always be told that all of my control complaints aren't because the game had any flaws ever, but because I magically always chose the platform that has the most like incorrect controls now or something.
Wait, you're playing the game wrong because of the platform that you're playing it on?
Yeah, like a lot of Zelda games will get that complaint. It's like, no, you should have played it on the GameCube or whatever. It had the perfect layout, and you're like, okay,
well, it's like now there's inescapably all of these, all the popular ones that my Patreon will vote for and so on are all these games that are like stuck around enough that they've been re-released over and over again. And so now there's all these opinions, and it's like I always have to make these mutually exclusive choices of which version to play. And the most authentic one is the hardest one to do, which is to fucking get the original hardware with the original controller and hope you have working controllers and hardware still that haven't had their own problems over the years and drift and other shit going on. And then also be able to fucking record that, which is really hard. Anything before HDMI is actively difficult to record and adds so many problems. And I have spent hours and hours with weird pieces of hardware trying to get any kind of good signal out of like a GameCube or something over the years, and it is such a massive pain in the ass just to then have like something go wrong and you have to figure out how to set it up again the next session because something changed somehow, and like it's so much work to try to get, and then like the brightness will be wrong, or there's like weird noise because the signal has noise because it's not an HDMI cable, so like you have visual noise in the signal from like problems that are happening, and you're like, how the fuck? I wasn't planning on taking like a class on how to record this one console. I was just trying to play the fucking game.
I mean,
it's a process.
I always wonder I wish there was a more in-depth, like a real genuine breakdown of Game Grumps' little setup, because they're
the answer is that they gave up on it and they just do emulation. Like they've been doing emulation for years and years.
Oh, have they? I thought they still use the real consoles.
No, they really obviously emulate for stuff like a lot of these Sonic games they're playing and stuff like that. Like they joke about it sometimes. Like, no, I'm not. This is real. I'm not emulating it. Especially since in some cases they're literally doing multiplayer with each other online. It's like that's emulation. Like you can't do that with the original
Sega Saturn
game.
had an Ethernet port or whatever.
That's,
it was
no,
the
I mean
second
like
net.
they're playing old video games like that are like split screen and local and whatnot, but they're playing it online because they're quarantining.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, makes sense.
Like that's fucking Four Swords Adventure via emulation shit going on there. Like you're not, you can't do that in the actual game.
Wait a second.
What in Turnation?
Do you know those
cheating?
Do you know those machines that are like $900 each, and they're like upscalers all in a little box, and they're
Yeah, I've got a Frame Meister that's like $600.
Yeah, that's the one. Those don't capture HDMI or convert.
That thing is really hard to use. Not the least of which is because it's in Japanese.
Oh, that would. Yeah.
It's entirely in Japanese. I have a sticker overlay that overlays the entire controller with English inputs, but then it's still hard to learn how to use it and what all the settings mean, and also to figure out how to customize it separately for every single console and platform. And then you're still dealing with the signal loss of the cables that work with the console in the first place on the way to the FrameMeister. And there's just a lot.
Yeah.
It's a very. It is not the kind of like plug and play setup that a lot of my setup actually is.
Yeah, there's nothing better than having a plug and play system.
I am
just
so not a hardware
reliability.
enthusiast. Like I tune out every time you guys start talking specs about anything, and like I'm just immediately out. I'm like, oh, okay, it's fucking. It's like car talk. Like when you
Yeah.
you two start talking to Effie about like fucking brand numbers and models and shit. I'm like, I don't know why anyone would even remember that, but okay, there they go.
Well-
there's value in not like I look at it the value of knowing or remembering the things that you care most about. Like I know what kind of mouse and keyboard I have because if I don't know, something happened and I need to replace them. Those are like important to me. I need to know like, hey, this keyboard that I'm using has very particular switches in them because I want it to sound and feel a certain way when I press buttons. And so if I'm going to get a keyboard, it needs to have those particular switches. And so knowing what kind of keyboard it is, I can look at it, look at the specifications, look at the keycaps, move on from there. But other things, it doesn't make as much sense. Like I don't really need to know what kind of like model mixer you have. I mean, it helps if I want to look it up and see what you own, but your mixer is most likely not going to be unique enough that it matters. Like as long as it has a XLR cable in it, it probably can do what you need it to do. It might have different signal ranges, but I think your microphone's a more important, like, you know, your microphone's range is a lot more important than your mixer. Unless you're like Jay-Z and you're recording a hit album. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I think there's sometimes when having the technical knowledge, it can be useful to make things easier, but generally...
I think whenever I have to deal with something reasonably complicated, I just get stressed out and power through it and figure out how to do it the one time. And then I just remember how I did it and dump everything else.
That's
like how
it's
like how every time I compress one of these videos for Handbrake so that I can send it to you guys in a reasonable file size, and instead of trying to upload to both of you and YouTube simultaneously via like a 20 gig file or some shit, I literally just open it up and click the same 4 things out of habit that I always have and move on, and I don't even think about them anymore.
Well,
and
yeah,
then I just export it.
But that's the inertia of usability. That's not like, you know what an X265 is.
It's like a lot of my workflow depends on being able to use stuff that doesn't have to change, and that's why it's such a pain in the ass if it's like, oh yeah, this update wiped out your OBS settings, start over, figure them out again, or when you have to do something like FrameMeister and it's like, I really just need to start recording, please. I don't need 10 hours of troubleshooting this thing instead of recording, because then today it's fucked and probably tomorrow.
But
that makes sense.
What I'm saying is, like, you're not doing it once allows you to at least talk about it. Like I don't know, even things like most people wouldn't talk about, like the sampling rate of a sound file or the color space.
Oh, I don't.
If I tell you this.
Like I don't think about it until something goes wrong, and then it's like, oh
Yeah,
fuck,
but,
we need to
like,
like
you're
sync up our
aware of
sampling
it.
rates, and then we sync them up, and then it doesn't work anyway, and you're still constantly out of sync for some reason.
Yeah, that's weird. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what's good. For those of you at home, if Colonel ever sounds out of sync, part of it is because he's in Portugal, so like there is no proper sync of connecting voices this far away. But also, yeah, like his voice just wanders. It just stretches and shrinks compared to ours in duration, and I don't know why.
Turn down the frame rate on your Audacity.
On your Audacity.
I don't know.
Stop having Audacity at 120 frames per second. Maybe if you turn down to 60 like everybody else, you'll sound normal.
Maybe it's the way I'm exporting it. Now we'll figure it out later.
Are you exporting it as a WAV file?
Yeah.
Then you should be fine. I don't think there's any there's no particularly important details in your export that would change its timing. Like the timing shouldn't change from that. That is weird though. That is weird that you would be out of sync consistently.
I don't know.
I would wonder,
it's been a godsend ever since I started recording literally everything in OBS simultaneously, like TeamSpeak and my commentary and the game and so on. Because back when we had to fucking record our voices separately and sync them up, it was just random. Like, we would do a sync at the beginning and end of each recording, and it would match up perfectly sometimes, and other times it'd be like you sync it up at the beginning, and at the end it's just way off, and you're like, do I stretch the audio so that it matches at the end and hope that averages out to it being synced the rest of the time? Like, I don't know what the fuck happened.
I don't know, man. Kids these days have it easy. I remember the sheer nightmare it was to try to record stuff prior to OBS. And you're just just DAWs, just having digital audio in workspaces. It's like a revolution. Awful.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine recording multi-track on like a tape with 4 tracks and having it all timed and cutting it? It's just like impossible. And then mastering it. That was oh my god! I can't believe people. I mean,
and now you can
people
just
did that because they could, but.
You could just bust out like 42 tracks and merge it into one MP3 file. And it's like, yeah, here's a song I made. You're like, fuck you. How fucking dare you do that? Like there's some audio engineer that's just crying, that's weeping at the simplicity of it all. And it's like, oh my God, this took me like 2 years to do.
and even other things like making a sound on a synthesizer. It used to be that you'd have to order the freaking chips and like solder them to your board, or at least have cables that connect them all. Have you seen those original synthesizers that were like a wall in front of the keyboard, and they had the wall just had holes, and you had to plug in all the cables so you turn the patches on and off. And it's just like, my God, who does? I mean, artists do, but it's just and of course those things go for thousands and thousands of dollars now, and they still work, hopefully. Otherwise, you're just.
I would imagine they still work unless they've been like exposed to rust or something. They pretty much are just going to be consistently good forever, right? Like the chips. Yeah, the chips
probably don't last more than 500 years, though.
Well, okay, yeah, they may eventually. Time will catch up with them, but I mean, like a normal human lifespan, as long as you're not like rough with it, that thing's going to last you your entire life. You're not making a bad investment. You're just making a questionably expensive one.
That's why people who buy old stuff sometimes talk about it like, I'm now going to be the guardian for the next few years, or a few 10 years or something, because the old stuff is meant to outlast us if we collect it. Or at least, well, depends on the person, I suppose. I don't own anything old because I'm not rich, but if I did, I would buy something that would outlast me for sure.
I'm not sure I would probably. I think I always think about buying old stuff or getting old stuff and trying to Theseus ship it, or I would just kind of remove the organs and keep the chassis.
You're a restore person.
I would rather restore.
Not restore, like rescue, I think is the term.
Yeah,
restore would be.
Like my grandparents have this compactor. It's like a trash compactor. And it's like the size of, I don't know, like it'd be like the size of a normal trash can. It's a little bit thicker in the back because it has, a motor and stuff in it. but this thing has been consistently running. Like, it has been a consistent working piece of technology for like 45 years now. And it's like they've had it basically since they've had their first home. And it still works. Like, it still works. And they're finally at the point where like they're gonna move soon. And they're like, oh, I don't think we're taking it with us. I think we don't need it anymore. And I'm like, I've been sitting here like kind of debating, like, man, I think I might take it, and I might I think I might just try to restore it, because I know it's old. Like, you can hear that it's not running as good as it should be, but it works. So to old people, it's just like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And you're like, okay, well, yeah, but I also don't want to make it sound like I'm killing hundreds of robots at a single time every time I press the start button. But it's still good. It still works. It's so solid. And it's a good piece of old technology. You look today, it's like, oh, how much would it cost to buy a modern version? It's like, well, it's got too much stuff. It's got too many features, and it's going to cost you like way too much money for the one thing you want.
And it's only going to last
which is
5 years or something if you're lucky.
Yeah, and it's going to last about as long as usually the technology in it will last, which is like 2 to 3 years at maximum. And by that time,
then if you want to repair
okay,
it, you can't do it.
Yeah, and you can't repair it because we don't technology. You're not allowed to repair anymore. You're too stupid. Stop touching things. And
but it's not even being allowed. It's like it's chips, it's boards. It's like, what are you gonna do? It's programmed in a way that nobody can tell.
Sure, you can. I mean, there are some parts that you can't really touch on yourself, but there's a lot of technology now that just consistently is built to not be touched. Like they package it in such a way that you open it up and it will just fall apart into nothing, and you're like I don't
McDonald's
know.
ice cream machines.
That's definitely not the problem with McDonald's ice cream machines.
you try to do literally anything with it. It just locks up and says, "Fucking call the guy. Fuck you."
Yeah, I think those machines are definitely those machines are definitely a racket. They solely exist so that somebody can explicitly a racket. But yeah, like so it's like it's I don't really care about the internals of this old trash compactor. I don't care if it has some kind of like, little wizard living in the engine that works really hard to keep it going. It's I want the technology, and I'm willing to just like bring it back to whatever it used to be, even if that means I have to like change some parts about it so it's smoother. Like, I think even if I restored it, it would still be ungodly loud, because I think just the engine that it used by default was a shitty, loud engine because it was from like the fucking 50s. And not to diss on the 50s, but they were a little primitive in a lot of their technology. So it's like they don't have the cool.
There's a lot of dissing to do on the 50s.
You know what? Yeah, but the 50s don't need to be dissed. They are the 50s. They know what they did wrong. They don't need to be reminded.
They don't. That's the problem.
No, that's the people in the 50s. I'm saying
there's a lot of attempts to return to the 50s.
I mean,
if you want to make it silent.
Place? Good times. Good times.
It took place like 200 years in the future.
No, but but the world ended in the 50s, right?
No, it's 2077. But
Fallout actually doesn't make sense as a setting. It's kind of stupid.
No. It's definitely stupid.
They leaned heavy on this weird retro-futurist thing, but the apocalypse didn't happen during the era that everything's calling back to, which makes aggressively no sense, because the vaults are a futuristic thing that happened in the future. So the actual apocalypse happens in the future, and the apocalypse post-nuclear world that the actual game takes place in is the distant future. But at no point is the timeline actually like the era that all of the music and art is from.
I am aggressively nodding my head in agreement.
Fallout makes no fucking sense.
Why?
But it's not Fallout that doesn't. It's Fallout 3 that doesn't. Fallout 1 and 2 were very consistent in that regard. They didn't move to the 50s.
Yeah, Bethesda ruined Fallout, I guess, in that way. But it's also like
in many ways.
Yeah, but that's admittedly one of my favorite parts about Fallout is I do enjoy the aesthetic they chose, but it aggressively contradicts the premise in a way that I didn't even realize till years after I'd played their games, because it just slots in so naturally that it's not until you play like fucking Fallout 4, I think, where you're like, hang on a minute, this entire game doesn't make sense, and that means all of them don't make sense.
I don't remember the plot of Fallout
4,
4, but I always was under the impression that the Fallout, I guess the Fallout war was the Cold War. So I just assumed that it took place in the 50s, because when else would you have a Cold War that had the threat of nuclear annihilation?
The Cold War, the 80s?
The basic premise of Fallout.
No, the Cold War. Well, the Cold War was
art.
immediately post World War II, wasn't it? Just like
Yeah. So the basic premise of Fallout is that, as a piece of art, or as a piece of
47
media,
to 89.
yeah.
The basic premise is that you have a future as imagined by the folks who made comic books back in the 50s. So basically, that's why the cars are all bulbous and round, and why there's robots with one wheel, and why, it's just sort of that sort of Jetsons kind of weird thing. It's not really Jetsons, because Jetsons is 60s, but still, that's the sort of retro.
Jetsons is the future.
No,
That's the sort of retro-futuristic.
The Jetsons are literally take place in the 2000s. In 2000 is when the Jetsons take place.
The end of the world came pretty much as we had predicted, is how it starts Fallout 1, and then it continues on to some what's the word? Keith, help me out here. What is the name of the people who think that we have too much population, and that's why people starve to death and die?
Politicians.
No. There's a name for that.
Thanos.
Politics. Thanos.
Thanos. Yeah. What's the name? What's the name for that? It's like,
I don't know what
Are you talking about? That just sounds like doomsdayers. It just sounds like
it's
a
basically
typical...
the overpopulation scare, and that it's
I don't know about there being a word for it.
I'm pretty sure there's a word, but it's missing.
The first thing that came to mind was eugenics, but that's just adjacent. It's not actually.
Yeah, it's adjacent to racism, to imperialism.
Eugenics is what comes
things.
next when they're talking about how the world's too populated and idiocracy is real and so on. And they're like, that must mean there's people who more and less deserve breeding, and that's the problem. And that's like stage 2, but I don't know what stage 1's called.
So I don't know how to pronounce this word. Hold on, let me check this up. I think I found it, but I don't.
Oh, you found it.
Malthusianism.
Oh yeah, Malthusianism. I've heard of that.
That's what it is. The view that without moral restraint, the population will increase at a greater rate than its means of subsistence, as proposed by the English
that sounds
economist,
really dumb.
and very important, clergyman, Thomas Robert Malthus. So
Fallout 1 specifically starts with that sort of idea. It's a popular idea. A lot of people believe in that. It's a myth. It's not how it works. But demonstrably
very
not how
ironic
it works.
that a lot of people believe in that idea. Maybe it's an overpopulated belief.
Well, because the modern reality is that we don't. It's not that we don't have enough resources; is that we fail to distribute them correctly. Partly because we have a world that's organized in a way that incentivizes not doing that.
Also, excuse you? How do we not have enough resources? There's a whole fucking universe out there. Are you telling me we can't take advantage of a whole universe?
I mean, like food. Like we throw out endless food every day.
In Fallout 1,
and we lock it up because we specifically don't want people to be able to get it that might need it.
You can just make food. We just do that. We just grow food.
In Fallout 1's
no
defense, it's a throwaway line. It works lyrically, works really well. Or I say lyrically, but like it's a nice intro to the thing. It's well written, and it's really focusing more on fuel, because that's why in 2077, the 23rd of October, I think, at 2 a.m., the world ends. But before that, the Cold War with Russia had ended, and there were basically a new escalation. There was a new escalation of Cold Warness with China, and that's how the setting of Fallout has things like Chinese soldiers in the East Coast. It doesn't make sense for Chinese soldiers to exist there, but they are there in Fallout 3. But yeah, the Fallout the United States went to war with China, and then that's how it started. That's how it ended.
That seems,
which at the time of recording is a pretty grim thing to be talking about, honestly, because
that seems really stupid. Then why do we have shitty cars in the future
and not flying cars? Well, they had specifically gasoline operated
Nuclear?
cars into the future.
I thought
Because
I thought everything was nuclear powered in the Fallout universe.
no, that's Bethesda not having played Fallout 1 and 2. They didn't play. They just made Fallout 3
so in
without
the
playing it.
Fallout 1 and 2 universe, everything was normal except like
Yeah, because that's fun. Like that's the fundamental critique of the system is that they would rather destroy the entire humanity rather than let go of fuel or of oil. Like it's the whole story of Fallout 1 and 2 as well is the dependence on petroleum, and I always thought that it was a very important theme of the series. It's not like it's not the be all and all for the minute to minute storytelling or even characters and all because you're just dealing with people in the wasteland, but the storyline itself deals with that. It's just they didn't want to let go of oil, and they blew each other up. Not everybody up, in fact.
But so who gets the oil?
In the end, there was only like this. This is spoilers for Fallout 2 and for Fallout, but honestly, it's just lore for the newer Fallout. So basically, what happened is China and the United States both knew of a specific oil reserve under the Pacific, and they were like, "Oh, who can take care of it and whatnot, or who can explore it and whatever." And there was basically the United States had, I think, there's one specific text in Fallout 2 that talks about all this, but basically the United States made a secret oil rig over that particular reserve, and China basically ran out of fuel because there was nothing else. There was no more petroleum. And when they eventually invaded mainland the U.S. and Alaska, they lost the war, among other things. They lost the war because their tanks ran out of fuel, which again is a very thing that
they launched a war having already run out of fuel, thinking that their vehicles won't run out of fuel in the war.
Yeah.
What?
But also,
how did they even get to How did they even get to Alaska? How much fuel did they burn just getting here?
Well, almost all of it. So yeah, basically.
What was the best? What are you telling me that was the best option? Was to come to the United States? Like Russia's right next door. Go invade Russia. They have oil.
But Russia didn't have oil. They didn't have oil in Fallout. So
what was Russia doing?
I don't actually. They're not mentioned too much.
This makes zero fucking sense. What the shit? How would you?
You don't know the half of it.
Pacific? How would going across the Pacific Ocean when you already ran out of fuel be the optimal solution here? And also, what do you hope to accomplish given the United States, which is a very you need oil to get across. You have to use gas to get across the United States.
Yeah.
There's no other option. You cannot get across this stupid barren wasteland without a car or a plane, both which take fuel. Like,
yeah, like the thing.
What?
Like what you're saying makes sense, but it's even your critique, I should say, makes sense. But it's even worse when you think about how this is delivered in the game. And what was behind this being delivered in the game. So this happens in Fallout 2. This is described in Fallout 2. You find in the end base, in the end part of the game, you find a text that says this. I'm not going to spoil Fallout 2, but apart from what I just said, because it's more lore than anything. But it's not related directly to the storyline of Fallout 2. It's just sort of a lore book, and it's a lore book that very much feels like it was written by not the main writers of the game. It's written like I think I'm not sure if it's the one in particular that says the stuff that we're talking about, but there's at least one lore book. There's like 3 lore books in the last area, and one of them very much feels like it was written just by the first time writer. It's just so weird and just so poorly written, honestly. But the other 2 are a little bit better. But it feels like they were not main. They were just like, oh, this is a funny thing that we're just gonna add over here as an Easter egg, and they're gonna find out what happens. And so there's mentions of zany things, way zanier things than what I'm referring, because I forget the rest. But yeah, it's just
this
weird.
is a
like,
universe that has a patriotic iron giant. So I'm not like it's not that I can't suspend my disbelief for the stupidity. I mean, yeah, it's still Fallout 3, but I'm saying like. I understand that Fallout isn't like, it's not that it makes sense, but there is something almost comedically stupid about the idea that you've run out of fuel and your best option is to go invade a country which you can't get to without expending pretty much all of the remainder of your fuel. Like, why?
Yeah,
I don't know why wouldn't you invest what little resources you had on like creating synthetic petroleum or like trying to find some other solution besides
or using
like
nuclear or any other of the other
or
things
like
that
fission
people
or
can
just
do.
something besides right. And this is a nuclear society, like literally that's how this world ends, so it's not like they didn't have access.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying, like, it's the parody behind Fallout. That's the critique. It's like, look at what happens when you're so dumb that you don't want to stop using oil. You blow up the world. And obviously it's delivered in a very, like, it's not... if you want to read critiques of petro dependency, you're not going to be playing Fallout 1 and 2. It's not, but that's the theme. Like, if you want to critique something, you need to make it at least... unless you're like going really deep, you need to make it ridiculous, because otherwise it doesn't work, right? Because otherwise people are going to be like, yeah, they were right by hanging on to their petroleum because of whatever other reason that people use to hang on to petroleum. Socioeconomic reasons, that's the one. They always say that.
Well,
and the thing, I think the thing that it's weird that, the thing that I was saying, that this is just delivered in sort of an Easter egg sort of way. It's such an important aspect of of the world of Fallout. Like, if you want to talk to people about the world of Fallout, you're gonna have to focus on stuff like this. Not necessarily just this bit, but you're gonna have to focus on things. Oh, they had the United States Army had this power armor that was just like a thing. You had like a mech sort of thing. We went into the power armor and it had like servos, and you were stronger because of it and whatnot. So you're gonna focus on like the lore bits, right? It's if you talk about a game, you're gonna focus about the lore. But the moment to moment of Fallout 1 and 2 is just not about that. It's just, oh, we went to a place, it was full of lizards, and then this fella broke his leg, and then there was this group of farmers that lived underground, and all the side quests. That's what Fallout is. I always felt that. And I think a lot of people agree with me, even if they prefer one or the other. It doesn't really matter. I think everybody that praises Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 praises, and maybe not as much Fallout New Vegas, but Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 praises it just for the freedom of going anywhere and finding all these crazy situations. Like, even Andrew, we were talking in Discord the other day about how I'm playing Fallout 3 right now, and I removed all the combat. And it was like, oh, that you said that doesn't make any sense because that's what people play it for. And I agree with you. I think so. I think a lot of people play Fallout 3 for the combat, which is totally valid. I'm not trying to, when I critique a game, I'm not criticizing anybody that plays those games. It's anybody likes whatever games, it's fine. But Fallout 3 is very much a departure from Fallout 1 and 2. It's just, it's a dungeon crawler. I think it doesn't strike many people as a dungeon crawler as it would maybe if it came out 20 years before, because back then you had like Ultima Underworld and Might and Magic and things like that, where it was very obvious what you were playing. And JRPGs stuck with dungeon crawlers a lot more.
Go into this ruined gas station, shoot 7 ghouls, and pick up a bunch of glue. Hope it matters later.
Yeah, that's a dungeon crawler. That's but the thing is, Oblivion is that. And looking back, I think about this every once in a while, but it still sticks to me that Bethesda was so adamant. They designed Fallout 3 with this in mind. They were so adamant that Fallout 3 was not Oblivion with guns. People were concerned that it was going to be Oblivion with guns,
which it is,
and which it is. And Bethesda even talks about it as Oblivion with guns later on, not before the release and not immediately
Literally, my
after.
first 2 Bethesda games were Oblivion and then Fallout 3, and it was a natural fit.
Of
it
course,
was an easy transition.
And the thing, all the reviews were like, "Oh, this game, Fallout 3, it's this and this, and in comparison to Oblivion, it does this better, or doesn't do this as good, or whatever." And they compared it to Oblivion, not Fallout 1 and 2, because obviously it's made for the fans of Bethesda, not for the fans of Fallout. I mean, it is also a little bit for the fans of Fallout at the time. Fallout 3 is, I feel. But it's just so misguided because it does it in the most ham-fisted way possible. It's just like, do you like Brotherhood of Steel? Yes, we're going to put them in this game so the old fans can like it. And then they showed that they didn't understand what the Brotherhood of Steel was about. Do you like the Enclave? Oh, never mind that they get annihilated at the end of the second game. Now we're going to put them in this game and also misunderstand what they were all about. Because they were a criticism. That's interesting, actually. I was going to say they were a criticism of the government of the United States, but that's not true. Fallout does this interesting thing where the literal remnants of the government are not the criticism of the government of the United States. Because they're a fictitious government.
The new California Republic?
The NCR is the criticism of the government of the United States. Because they're sort of this rebirth of the old sort of neoliberal sort of what's the word? Institution. What's the word? Establishment. That's the one. And Fallout 2 is very ham-fisted about it. Fallout 2 tends to be very ham-fisted about a lot of the things, but Fallout New Vegas just does it a lot better. Fallout New Vegas it's genius in so many regards, but the way it treats the NCR is just chef's kiss.
I feel like there's not a good form of government in any Fallout game, literally ever. They're always all bad choices. There's no anybody who shows up as like
government, it probably wouldn't have the world it is.
I just meant that every time I interact with somebody in a Fallout game, it's like, I have a plan to fix this. It's like, this is a terrible plan. What are you doing?
What do you consider government though?
Government is a way to unify people in a collaborative effort of survival.
Okay, so I think I think there are governments like that, but they're a lot more localized, specifically the vaults. And of course, you can argue because
the vaults are also bad because it creates bubbles, and they never interact with other people.
But
half the vaults were just literally evil.
Yeah, half the vaults were, but there's some vaults that are...
every vault was an experiment anyways, but that's besides
not every
the point.
Vault. Not every vault.
Oh,
most
yeah, right. There was that one vault that had nothing.
I think there's a few.
Placebo vault.
No, I'm pretty sure there's a few. At least the way Fallout 2 describes it. Because it's in Fallout 2 that you find out that about that thing. But at least originally they meant there's some vaults being an experiment or being quirky. But if I tell you in my story there's this village where everybody is nice to each other and they choose their representative every year and there's no problems whatsoever by their government. I'm by definition creating a good government in my story, but that's obviously unrealistic because I'm just bypassing all the problems of creating a good government. I'm saying that it's good. And Fallout does that in regards to the vaults. And I think in regards to some of the cities in Fallout 2 specifically, Modoc comes to mind as being a fairly idyllic place in regards to its local government. And again, it's very localized, so it's just a town, and the government is very dispersed, and people just hang out and do their thing. Not that there's not wrong things about the city, but I think if you're referring to the big organizations like NCR or the Legion or the Brotherhood of Steel, that everything is bad because it's that's the fun. If you're gonna make a big power thing, you're not gonna make them the good guys. You're gonna make them tyrants so that you can fight them in the face a little, at least. And then their tanks run out of fuel, and they go in and ask the police to see if they have fuel to give them, and then they get arrested like chumps.
It is just odd. That I mean, I guess at some point that's kind of the whole point. You can't have, there can't be anything good or successful in a Fallout game, because then that would defeat the entire premise, which is that it's supposed to be a game where you deal with the failures of society in every in isolated ways, or small little condensed ways, I should say. You'd have to deal with
4 hurts my brain.
Well, Fallout 4 is a little bit of an outlier in the group here at some level. There's just a lot in.
Well, it's Fallout just you get to the major choices near the end, and it's they can't even begin to think that you might explore and interrogate what's going on and want to make choices along the way. It's literally just pick a faction and then play their linear quests with no choices along the way, or have a fail completely all at once out of the entire faction choice. Like, you either literally do everything they want you to do all the way through and there's no choices, or you like shoot one of them once and you fail the entire faction and then you default back to like the railroad or something, or the or Preston. And that's the role playing supposedly.
That's
but
outstanding.
Much it's a horrible game.
When you compare it to Fallout New Vegas, it's such a huge step backwards.
Yeah, no, it's embarrassing.
It's unbelievable.
They're chasing the specter of somebody else's take on their game, and they do it so poorly that they only regress with each sequel to the point where 76 happens. But no, what's so frustrating though is that we see the most large scale organized civilization place out of any of the 3D Fallouts to some extent. I guess maybe New Vegas might have been more, but like that city is like a lot in, like, what is it, Boston or something in 4? I don't remember where the fuck it's set anymore, but like
it's North Carolina,
like that
West
place,
Virginia.
That place is such. I thought West Virginia was the meme place from 76.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's Boston. You're right. Fallout 4
Yeah,
is
I think
Boston.
4 might be Boston, which is the same setting as 3, isn't it?
No, 3 is in Washington, Maryland specifically.
Oh, it's the east, all these East Coasts. But like, you see that big city and you get like, I'm a reporter, that's my job. Like, they're on the level where they have reporters and private investigators as like career choices. That's the level their civilization is on. But it's all made of like scrap garbage and rust poop. Like, the whole city is trash, and like they fundamentally cannot imagine a setting, and it's so deeply frustrating. Because, like, yeah, you go into Red Rocket at the very beginning of the game. Like, this is like the first structure you see practically when you start playing Fallout 4 and you emerge into the apocalypse world. And Red Rocket just is
Gross.
that's a lot. It's just a currently running, like, diner. That person just works there every day and they're making a living, all right? And there's just skeletons in the booths from the apocalypse.
Oh no, they freaking
Like
plastic skeletons.
Like, they didn't clear out the skeletons? And like, they've seemingly been working there forever. And like, there's this whole stupid gameplay thing where you pick up 500 stupid pieces of glue and duct tape from all the pointless dungeons that don't go anywhere, and they're so devoid of context that the enemies are literally randomized from playthrough to playthrough. That's how little those places are like designed content. Most of the world is just practically procedurally generated garbage. And they created a hoarding mechanic where you pick up all the stupid glue and duct tape and glass and shit so that you can then mulch it in like it's like Prey but bad, where you're supposed to try to mulch it all into like, I made beds, I made walls, wow, I'm building outposts for these villagers. But like, it's not a simulation, so you can just like build a tree house and then put 75 beds in that tree house and then delete the ladder, and that'll have enough bedding for everyone in the entire civilization forever, and they never have to be able to reach their beds or like have like the SimCity simulation of like, this is where I work and this is where my bed is. Like, it's never like Oblivion. You're not like they're not generating AI to like interact with the setting in any way. You're just putting clutter everywhere, and it's up to you to care about making it look like make sense as a layout. But it can never make sense ultimately, because everything you make, even though you're making it, looks like it went through the apocalypse. Like, it's all rusty and garbage and chipped and obliterated. Like, everything you craft in all of your bases in Fallout 4 looks like something you found in Fallout 4. Like, and it's like, I made it though. Why is the paint fucked up? Why is this board? Why are all the walls I placed made of corrugated rusted steel? It's like, aren't we smelting this shit? I made this out of 75 napkins. Why does it look like I just found it in someone's basement?
Yeah,
the entire setting of Fallout 4 is infuriating all the way through. It's just it's so frustrating, on top of being a bad RPG and not a very good shooter and so on.
The thing about the village creation, to me, as somebody who has experience with a creation kit, what do they call it? They probably call it some other pretentious nonsense.
Like a level editor, basically.
Yeah. So I made some mods for Oblivion back when Oblivion came out, so I know how their workflow works, and their own team uses that. Obviously, they have more tools for asset viewing and editing and workspaces and whatnot. But the level editing is it's pretty. It's not clunky in the sense that, as a game it is super clunky. But when you're making a game, when you're making anything professional, you want a lot of freedom, a lot of capacity to tweak everything. So it doesn't do anything for you. Not that it couldn't do, but the level editor doesn't like easily snap assets together. You can add snap points yourself. I think some assets already have them, but if you're making like, do you know the in Oblivion how if you touch anything, I think in Fallout 3 is the same thing. Yeah, it's definitely the same thing. If like there's a table full of food on top of it and you touch anything on the table,
you touch one thing and everything else moves and levitates.
Yeah. Yeah, the reason why that is because when you enter a room or when you load the game, every item, whether the item has physics or doesn't, every item is set as it is in the level creator. So you can go into the level creator and you have complete freedom of setting everything properly. Like the candles or the food on a table, you can just set it like it's touching the table and it's lovely. But then the physics, the mesh and all that, because it's very computationally intensive. Well, it wasn't for the computer, but they had to dumb it down for the Xbox 360. Because it's very computationally intensive, the physics calculation, they basically have these big collision things. So nothing ever touches anything in Oblivion or Skyrim. It's all ever so slightly far away because it's just a way to simplify collision. And that's what happens. All of a sudden, the table that was set in the creation kit now is set in your game physics, and everything is floating around and doing weird nonsense. And the freedom to make everything just as you like, it's very important in a level editor. But what they did in Fallout 4 is they brought the level editor wholesale. It's actually a lot worse than in the actual level editor, because in the level editor you have a toolbar and you have a find button and all the things, and in the game you have to control it with a keyboard and mouse or with a controller, so it's worse. But they basically have the level editor put into the game, and it's so obvious that it's that. They didn't make because if you think about it, if you're gonna imagine you're designing Fallout 4, and from the beginning you think, okay, I want a shooter where you have a dog and you talk to a bunch of people, and you can make villages and have villagers there that defend against raiders. Let's do that. Now tell me that this isn't going to be equal part a villager simulation and a shooter. Tell me that you're not going to allocate people to make something like City Skylines or something like that. Or not City Skylines, but what I mean, like The Sims sort of level design where it all snaps and it's all very obvious and you can just delete and you get mouse control, all that sort of good gameplay. But no, in Fallout 4, you're literally pointing at where you want with a bed, and then it's rotating all janky, and then it's clipping through the wall because it's just a level editor. And then, of course, you can make a tree house because the level editor doesn't have mechanics to detect if a city is logical. So, of course, they're not going to have that in the game. Because I have heard, I don't know if that's true, but I've heard people say that they basically they put the town editing very late in development into the game. And then when they saw that everybody loved it, in Fallout 4, the players loved it, they just decided to make it into a full game, which is Fallout 76. I can't help
but think that Bethesda's audience is just really used to, at this point, having like just incoherent video games to play. Because like the games so famously are modded so extremely, and like that almost never makes sense as a gameplay experience. Like the series of mods that people download to alter the game, like it just becomes this weird incoherent mess where just strapping on a bunch of mechanics that don't play together and just doing that endlessly is just like the goal seemingly. And it's like, I guess you can do that, but like it like most of the mods I've seen are essentially like they're either cosmetic stuff or they're the equivalent of like the level the base editor from Fallout 4, where it's just like it does not actually meaningfully interact with the rest of the game all that much. It's just like this weird vestigial thing that you can nonetheless become obsessed with if you want to do that all day, but it doesn't like I don't know. It's not like Darkwood or some shit where like the game has like a series of mechanics that all interplay in a way that a designed experience should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it's a remnant of being a big team, but the people developing the game is big, and they work, or at least they used to work back when Fallout 3 was made. They worked in very old school kind of ways that weren't really fit for big productions. So you can tell that there's a lot of inefficiencies and sort of people pushing in different directions. I think Fallout 3 really, really shows that specifically in the quest development and the writing, because it's so inconsistent. Like you have things that are obviously
is there an example that you can point to that they've ever made consistency?
I think in Skyrim it's more consistent than in their latest game, I suppose. I think it is more consistent than in Fallout 3. I didn't play Fallout 4, so I played it for a little bit only. So I can't really talk about it. But if I compare Skyrim to Fallout 3, and even to Oblivion, but more so to Fallout 3, I think Skyrim is more of a you don't find side quests as often in Skyrim that clash with each other, that are sort of the difference between let me think. In Fallout 3, for example, there's this one quest that has to do with you saving a town from the attacks of super mutants, and it's clearly like it's a simple quest. It's not a very difficult quest. It's basically going to a town and they tell you, oh, we have people that were kidnapped, go there and save them, and you go there and save them, and then when you come back you get attacked by super mutants, and then you save them, and it's good. It's simple, but the way it's developed in that particular quest, you have tiny details, and you see the path from the town to that particular the place where they were kidnapped at and whatnot. Like you can tell if you pay close attention. The game isn't very obvious at it, which means it's not particularly well designed. But at least you can tell if you pay close attention that it was designed with things like the player seeing the mutants from afar, and being capable of seeing the devastation that they make on the way there, and there's mines and whatnot, and then on the way people talk, it's inconsistent with each other, and you can tell there's something going on, and then there is something going on, and like the game doesn't really address it full on, but it's like these little details that you can pay if you're critical of what you're. When I say critical, I don't mean if you don't like what you're seeing, but if you are critical of what you're seeing and you analyze it critically, you can tell in advance that things are going to happen. It's fun. But then, like, there's the quests where you just have to collect, what is it? I think it's sugar bombs or whatever. It's this 200-year-old breakfast cereal that exists all over the wasteland, and you have to collect 20 of it. And then you go there, and the dude is very well written. It's one of my favorite characters, honestly. Very well voice acted as well. But the mission is the blandest stuff you can have, right next to a fairly complicated mission that is just bonkers and doesn't make any sense. It's the vampire mission that does not make sense, because it was. I think they wrote it in different days. They wrote half of it on Friday and the other half on Monday. I bet that's what it was. Because and then there's plastic skeletons with red paint all over the place, which just adds to the thing.
Red skeleton. Literally all of the flesh is gone because this thing has been skeletonized and fucking sandblasted and shit. But also it still has blood.
Yeah, that one, I'm talking about it. I'm now remembering. It's the vampire quest.
Can that happen? Can you stain bones?
No. I think
is there a reason you can't?
I think they'd be.
Is there a reason you can't?
No, I mean, I'm sure there's like a
Not
chemical
like in the
fucking
game.
slurry you can put them in or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, like if your body could stain the bones with its insides, it would probably do that when they're in it.
Yeah. Your bones would be
For
years. That's true. That particular
so
vampire quest, there's it starts out with it can start out in multiple ways. It's a well-designed quest. It's just not well written. But it can start out in multiple ways. You can go up to a townhouse, and you find 2 plastic skeletons on the floor, and there's red paint, and you're like, this is bad. And then you go talk to the town villager or town leader or whatever, the dude that tried to kill you when you got in, incidentally, but he's the town leader. And you talk to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, those people they were dead all of a sudden, and their son hasn't been the same since. And when we found them dead, there wasn't a single drop of blood. They didn't have a single drop of blood in them, and they had 2 punctures in their necks. I don't know what that is." Very. It's not well written, but
that's impressive. They have the technology to know that there's no blood left.
So as well. But right away, the game is telling you that there was no blood, and they had no blood in them, and they were actually plastic skeletons in their houses, and there was blood on the floor, which doesn't make sense. But that's all right. It's a video game. You don't play. No, it's all right. The problem with that quest is that at the very end, when you confront the killer says that he ravaged, that he specifically says that he killed his victims in a non-vampiric way, and made blood, and then which already again contradicts that bit. But the thing is, the only reason why I'm spoiling the quest if I say that. There's another problem with that. Basically, it means that he wouldn't have had to kill those people. It's like that quest is so full of holes. It's unbelievable, and it lasts for like half an hour. It's well designed. I mean, it lasts for half an hour if you skip all the combat. Otherwise, it lasts for an hour and a half. Because then you have to repair your guns and look for ammo, and there's mole rats and.
I just love it when you rant about something for a very long time, but then you always have to pepper in tiny little compliments that are really hard to believe in the larger context of everything else you're saying. You're like, is it though?
I mean it though.
What was the game we were talking about recently where you were like kind of praising it, and I just was like, really, the one that does that and that and that and that? You're like, oh, Vampyr, where I'm just like, are you sure it's not just trash? Because here's all the reasons it's trash. And you're like, I agree with all of those things. I'm like, so it's trash then.
You played Vampyr.
So it's a bad, poopy, bad game.
You know that it's good. You played Vampyr,
no,
right?
That game was like unredeemable. What the fuck was good about Vampyr? I mean, I remember you said like you insist that the ending is like the best written thing ever or something, which I can't even remember the ending. It did not stick.
No.
But the entire world and systems and how any of it works was just all unredeemably bad. It's a vampire game that frames everybody as a moral choice of whether or not you should eat people and so on. But then it's the way you not only is it the way you level up, but also every single enemy, like they're like, here's this guy's tragic backstory, and here's why this guy's a shithead, and fuck that guy. And if you kill X number of people though, oh my god, the entire district might collapse. So you gotta be really choosy about who you might consume as a vampire. Your unquenchable vampire thirst. That's the premise of the game. And then the game's like, oh yeah, in order to get the good ending, you have to never vampire anybody. It's like, what? That's the game though. It's like saying to get the good ending in Pathologic, you never like mix a drug or like loot if you loot a single trash can in Pathologic, you get the bad ending, and it's like, what the fuck? What do you think? How do you think you play Pathologic?
For a moment there, I thought you were talking about Vampire Bloodlines, and that's why I was a little bit confused.
No, Vampire Bloodlines has this horrible combat.
Yeah, but I agree with you on Vampyr. I think it's like I think Vampyr is very well written most of the time, and when it isn't,
what is glass but tortured sand?
But when it isn't, it spoils the rest. The thing is, if you can ignore those bits, the stuff that's well written is really well written. I wish. Look,
it's a game where all of the major choices in the game are confusing prompts that are one word each, and you can't tell what any of them mean.
Yeah.
And then the core mechanical choice is a thing they tell you to just not engage with, or you're a bad person. Like they didn't. I literally like forced myself to pretend it was a cooler game by just making myself have a quota where I had to eat X number of people per district minimum, because otherwise you just don't vampire in the Vampyr game, and the entire dilemma and half of the mechanics of the game are completely irrelevant and never engaged with, and it's just another boring open world game where you just do some quests and then it's over. I was astonished by that game coming out in the state it did, but I shouldn't be that surprised because it's the people that made Life is Strange.
I think, that might explain why it's well written then. Or at least why. The thing is, I can see that it's written by people who have written before, which is a step above a lot of games. But I really do think that Vampyr should have had a different game director, somebody who saw things as you are seeing and saw the shortcomings of a lot of the decisions, not least of which the way the dialogue tree works, the way you are allowed to talk to people about different things. It should be like, it's not about rewriting things. It's just about user interface and like design principles behind the game. And so what I mean is, I can see that team making an amazing game. It doesn't have to be about vampires. I can see them using the same talent that they have for cinematography, for the art direction is incredible, for sound direction is incredible. Like there's the technical, including the writing and the technical and artistical merits of that game are really, really strong a lot of the time, like 80 to 90% of the time. Admittedly, the other 20 or 10% does spoil the rest, but so I'm not going to fault anybody for.
And sometimes the worst parts are the most important parts of the entire game, and you're like, oh fuck.
Yeah, that's very true.
I don't even understand what the fuck they were thinking with like the prompts that you get at the major turning points of each plot line, where it's like. It feels like LA Noire when you find out that they developed the game with X meaning press, and then they changed it to doubt, which has a completely different connotation, but they'd already finished the game. And so you literally have a better time playing the game if you just like mentally replace doubt with press, because doubt is a baffling prompt that doesn't make sense basically ever when you're trying to play the game and you don't really know what it even means, and it just leads to your guy weird. Yelling at people and snapping at them. You're like, what the you said your three options you gave me, Rockstar, or not Rockstar, but the people that made it that got overworked and then died or whatever. There's like the one button says I think the buttons were doubt, truth, and lie, I think. So it's like this one means I think you're telling the truth, this one means I think you're lying, and this one means I doubt you. And it's like, no, it means press, as in like fucking go aggro on them basically, and they never explain that because they changed the word. And like, yeah, the major choices in Vampyr, they say completely baffling words that you don't know the meaning of or context for, and then you get morally judged for picking them. And I'm like, I didn't know what the choices were. They were all one word and confusing.
Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right. I cannot say that you.
You're saying your heart didn't know? You should always.
No, I'm just saying,
always be able to follow your heart.
Wants.
I'm just saying that it's a diamond in the rough, in the very rough.
Where you get the proper experience after you've already beaten the entire game and you can decode what it was trying to do.
Yeah,
I mean, make your own fun, like with Oblivion mods.
Yeah, basically.
I would say that
combat from Fallout 3.
I like games.
I would say that like
good.
That's true. Yeah, I agree. Sorry, Andrew.
No, I just think. I think at that point, diamond in the rough is more like saying, yeah, there is a diamond here of like there's a. No, never mind. It's too convoluted now. But
you're going for an analogy, basically.
I was going to, yeah, but then I realized that I didn't need to say that, and just like that's not worth my time. If it's a diamond in the rough, then at some point I have to be willing to say like, no, I actually don't feel like digging in trash today. I just want to play something that is both good on the outside and on the inside.
Fair. The thing is, like, I think there's a lot more value in obviously if people are not interested in playing diamond in the rough games, it's fair because they're rough. They are in the rough. Is the rough like the floor or something? Like the rough is diamond in the wall or diamond in the floor, or is it?
I think they mean that it's an uncut diamond. It's rough.
So uncut diamonds.
You gotta
look like
find
shit.
them cleavage planes.
Yeah, they're not like you would if you just go and grab a piece of diamond. It doesn't look very nice. You're not going to put that on a necklace. It looks like shit. So you have to polish a diamond. You have to like take time and make it look good, even though it's still worthless. And then you give it to someone. You know, it's like that's a That's your diamond.
But what I was gonna say is that I value a lot more the diamond in the rough kind of game than some. I was trying to look for the game that I was thinking of. There's this game that I played last year that was mind numbing in how bad it was, like uninspiring. Not necessarily bad. It wasn't a bad game. It was just like a 3 out of 5 kind of game. But a lot of people liked it a lot, and I don't.
3 out of 5 is pretty bad.
But like if it's polished, like it's an Assassin's Creed is a 3 out of 5. I don't care about that. I care about a Vampyr.
You're only perpetuating what I think. It's like
Scores
that's
are
a bad
stupid.
game.
Yeah, right. Sorry, 4 out of 3.
Scores are bad and stupid.
Yeah, but I'm using the 5.
I'm gonna give a 2 out of 10 to that statement you just made.
Dang it. A C out
It's
of
just like
60.
there's games that you could potentially score lowly because they're just like fucking
Outward.
blah ass trash games that just aren't interesting. And then people make the excuse like not everything has to be good or whatever, and I'm like weird life.
I think that's a good
life recipe. And then other
That's a
stuff
good
is just
argument.
like hyper inspired, super interesting, weird shit that is like really rough to like get yourself into or whatever, like Pathologic 1 or
like
something.
Pathologic, yeah. But I think that's a good argument. You just said it. Like, not everything has to be good. And I think if that's used as a defense of the games that you're playing, it's not. I don't like. I really don't think that we should play games that we think are good only because we think are good. Like, we should accept that sometimes we like bad games, and that makes us better at understanding what is good in a game. Because it's more. It's less about what we like and more about.
I think it also solves the problem. Like, if a game is a good game, then you're done.
But you cannot like
it.
a good game.
I don't like the
there's a
objectivity
difference
versus
between-
subjectivity argument there, where it's like, if this thing, I'm going to say this thing I love is bad because there's some weird abstract separation between things I like and things that are good, and it's like this weird like I'm going to be vaguely ashamed of the things I like, or I'm going to like begrudgingly claim something is good that I hate or whatever. It's like, no. You should be able to just say that something's good or bad, and people should understand that that's what opinions are, and also that there isn't really anything better than opinions either.
But that's what I'm saying, though. Vampyr, I like Vampyr, and I'm vaguely ashamed, as you put it, of this thing that I like, and I accept that games that I don't like are good. Like, there's.
It seems almost too idealistic to believe that there is no such thing as unequivocally bad or factually bad things.
But you can like the bad, though.
And I'm not saying you can't. There's no rule that you can't like a bad thing, but you can't tell me it's not bad. That is my hinder. That's my hang up. You can't tell me that something that
I'd
is
rather
bad
somebody
is
make
not
their
bad.
big 2-hour video essay like breathlessly arguing about how much they love the thing than being like roll over on expose their belly. Oh, all the things I love are bad and trash and everyone else is right. And no, fucking just go for it.
No, I think even that would not be enough of an apology for like Zero Escape. Like, I think people need to like, you need like, I don't know, some kind of
because you're mixing aspects of a game with a game itself as a whole. Like, just because the game is really pretty and you like really pretty things, it doesn't mean the rest of the game is good, and it doesn't mean you need to accept that the rest or need to defend that the rest of the game is good. Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, but that's the thing is like you can. I don't think one aspect of a thing doesn't make it good. Good is
like I think
good
Ghost
is a
of Tsushima
combination.
looks pretty, I guess, but that doesn't make me want to even try to say the game's good or play it again.
Yeah, like Earth is good. It's a planet people can live on, but there's people living on it. That makes it bad. Like it, but no, obviously the planet is still
the people.
Yeah, but like, but I'm saying like that, and that doesn't make Earth like factually bad because there's people on it. It makes it not great. It lowers its score overall as a planet that I'd want to live on, but it's still a good planet at the end of the day. It's got clean water. It's got some breathable air. Pretty good planet, I'd say. And games can be the same way.
Sometimes it has clean water.
Sometimes
well, I mean, it has. Well, again, the people are the bad part that lower the value because they also destroy the water and the air and the other things. But I'm saying that, like, on the foundationally speaking, the Earth is a pretty good thing. And games can be like that. You can play a game that on its foundation, it looks great, it runs smoothly, it has, interesting mechanics, and then every time someone opens their mouth, it sounds like a pterodactyl being burnt alive. And you're like, okay, well, this is kind of a negative. It might be a little hard to get through the storyline when everyone sounds like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the entire game is bad, because there's this one element you don't like of it. Inversely, I think just because there's some element that's of the game that is good, like, hey, man, this landscape is breathtaking. Just don't look at literally everything else of the game. Let's just talk about how good it looks. That doesn't make it a good game. That is a very nice looking piece of shit, but it's still a piece of shit at the end of the day. I think that's, to me, that is the important. I don't care about like what you like. What you like is irrelevant to anything. It's just that is just how you will get through life, is either liking or disliking things, and it has no real basis to me at all about the quality of something.
I think it's important to mention it though. If you're saying if you're saying this game is really good because I really like its open world, that's important. Like, it doesn't mean that that your opinion doesn't matter for people who don't like open world games, but it informs the other person that your perspective is coming at it from a different angle. Maybe you like you like the open world of Fallout 3, but I say Fallout 3 is really good because I really like its gun mechanics. And all of a sudden, we're not talking about the same thing, even though you're both agreeing that the game is good. You know what I mean? It's like the liking does change your perspective, I think.
The liking's informed by the experience anyway in the game.
Yeah.
You're still reacting to the same piece of art in different ways.
Yeah.
I got some rants I could go on about Elden Ring. Ooh, spicy.
Oh, yeah?
Non-spoiler. I have to be all careful about it and all that, because I'm not going to talk about a single boss or location or mechanic or anything except for the fact that crafting exists, I guess. But
and there's a boss with feet.
Way to ruin
there's
it.
A boss that has
shit.
There's a boss that has feet.
I'm over it. That's it. Canceled my playthrough. I'm not playing the game that I know.
Not the feet boss.
What?
Don't spoil people.
The internet can't wait. Put it on that boss goes on a wiki feed. Do they put a video game? I don't know what the fuck wiki feed is. What are the rules? Do they put video game characters on there? So as expected, open world is a questionable choice. It's definitely an interesting open world in that, like, there's no quest log and you're not constantly following like specific waypoints that are like literally like, go in this direction for 65 meters and you'll arrive at the next piece of bullshit where somebody monologues at you for 10 minutes, because that's how open world games are, is just fucking endless, fucking boring ass monotone dialogue by underpaid or undertrained voice actors that are very difficult to maintain your attention on, and then you just kind of like do the same 3 quests over and over again, and that's the entire video game basically. Like, the entire open world genre is a fucking nightmare. So by comparison, this is a breath of fresh air, because it still has the whole like Dark Souls NPCs set up where like they're sparse and they're not going to sit there and talk for 10 minutes, and they are interacting with the environment on some level potentially, and that you can probably kill them at least.
There's one guy that will talk to you and 50 other people that will stab you in the fucking back if you so much as look at them, is basically how the Dark Souls open world works.
Like, it's interesting to explore the world because there are genuine discoveries to be made all over the place. Like, you'll just kind of go on a slight tangent and then kind of like end up falling practically into like a cave or something that is like its own entire thing with its own like internal like ecosystem of dudes that are in there, probably ending with like a boss fight or something. And there are like entire surprise encounters that have this like weight to them of like, what the fuck is happening here? How did I stumble into this? And like all this shit's going on. And there's like a lot of moments where you like crest over a ridge and you'll just see like the entire next region all at once with no warning. And it's just, there's just something up with it. Like, you see it, you're like, what the fuck am I getting myself into? Like, and there's on a regular basis in my first 10 hours, I've had like encounters of various kinds that like made me reevaluate what I expected from the game and what I was going to be encountering and so on. And it's like, in that way, it's a well-crafted open world that rewards and encourages curiosity and exploration and all that. But as far as what I said before, Yeah, it's not Dark Souls like the map. Like I've gotten in really annoying arguments with this already, basically, because there's like people being like, just think of it as big Dark Souls. I'm like, no, that's not what things mean. Like that's not what words mean. Like in a game like in the like when you go through Upper Undead and so on, like in Dark Souls 1, like every single encounter along the way is a different group of enemies. They slowly layer in entirely new enemies, but also the existing enemies are remixed into different configurations so that each individual fight is a different group of enemies. Like, but then like the environment itself is informing the fight. So like when you first when you first get into that area of Upper Denburg that's going to lead to the bonfire, that giant dragon comes cruising through, and then there's two guys that are directly in front of you, but then there's another guy behind the boards of the barricade or whatever that'll come breaking out when you start the fight. And there's an archer up on the ledge that's shooting down at you guys, and it's like that's a unique encounter that happens right there and nowhere else in the game. Like that's a specific thing. And there's like there's tricks and surprises where it's like, okay, I'm gonna fight these two guys, and maybe if you're really observant, you notice the archer up top, so you gotta watch out for the incoming projectiles. And then right when you start the fight, fuck you, fourth guy comes out from behind, like just bursting out of the barricade, and like you have to reevaluate on the fly now how you're gonna handle this fight or you're gonna die. And like the bridge after the bonfire has people throwing like fire bombs at you and stuff like that. Like, and like there's all these different encounters all throughout the whole thing. Like that thing is a set piece after set piece after set piece thing. Elden Ring is a bunch of fields, and like exploration wise, there's definitely an experience of like, oh look, here's cliffs over here, and like what's going on over there, and you'll keep encountering weird new interesting things, and you'll dig into a particular crevice and find a whole fucking civilization hiding down there and stuff like that. But like map wise, it is just a big field, and sometimes the field is a swamp, and sometimes the field is a desert or something. I don't know, I haven't seen a desert. But like the biomes change, but it's like Minecraft where it's like it's just a big open place and you can explore it. But that experience that you're used to from Bloodborne and stuff like that, like the opening areas of Bloodborne and so on, like those aren't happening. That is not like, you might eventually find a castle or something that is like feels like you're in Boletarian Palace all of a sudden, and it's this one really tight area, and it's like a segment that feels like it's from another Dark Souls game, but the connective tissue that is the open world is just this massive expanse of just roads and things to find, and just like enemies that are just kind of spammed everywhere. Like I've had the same encounter with a pack of wolves like 10 times now, and it's just the same pack of wolves. They just there's just wolves sometimes, like in Skyrim, and like an area will be populated by certain enemy types, and some of them will be walking around, and some of them will be patrolling, and some of them will be hanging out and waiting for you to like wake them up or aggro them or something. But like it is not that tightly paced incredible setup that is like Dark Souls level design. It is basically the same encounters spawning over and over again, and frankly I think the majority of players will just like ride past them. Like you'll just run. I think I can't even imagine what it's like to play Elden Ring and not be the kind of person that's basically just running from most of the fights, like until you actually get to like a place you're trying to like clear or defeat in some way, because the world is just endless enemies that you'll be here all day doing nothing if you sit here and fight all these guys, and if one of them gets a lucky shot on you, they'll all respawn because you'll die, and then you're like, why am I doing this? So that's like, that part's a bummer, just because like there's parts of this where I'm like, yay, it's a new From Software game and I'm getting the proper experience and that's all great and so on. But there's also parts of me that are like, I'm not like re-exploring New Yarnum or something, the way that like I kind of was when I just played Bloodborne PSX, the demake of Bloodborne. Like that exploration where you're trying to unpack this really dense and beautifully designed environment, that's just not here. In fact, a lot of the secrets you find are like a cave where you just keep going deeper and lower into it, and then there's a boss at the end, and then you teleport back out, and that's the level. Like it was basically a windy hallway, but there wasn't like branches. You didn't like have to solve anything or think carefully about how to proceed, and there wasn't like different ways to proceed through it and surprises along that way. It's not like Tomb of Giants where it's like, oh man, how do I even get through this place? It's like, and like there are definitely like I have found significantly larger things and significantly smaller things, but that only highlights how throwaway some of the throwaway content is, that it's like, that was basically a hallway ending with a dude, and that was the dungeon. And so it's kind of a bummer to see like the return of more loosely designed and more disposable content, because that kind of feels at odds with what the goals that they were generally going for. It's an interesting experiment. What I don't like even more is the crafting.
Yes.
Oh, really?
I don't. Crafting's bad in video games. Almost full
Okay,
stop.
That's a little extreme, but all right.
It makes sense in Minecraft, and it makes sense in survival horror. Like in Darkwood and Resident Evil and The Last of Us, there is a specific pool of resource types, and there are risk reward sort of choices to be made about how like this thing can be used in like 2 or 3 different ways, and they very deliberately set it up so that you are having a bit of a crisis about which one is the right call to make. And they'll probably also limit your
basically is
and they'll
like
limit your inventory space so you can't carry everything.
Yeah.
Like the best Resident Evil games are the ones where you're planning your routes between safe rooms because you want to have enough stuff to survive, but enough empty space in your inventory to pick things up to help take to the next safe room, because you're trying to also scavenge. And then the things you get, you're like, oh shit, this specific thing can be used to make like a first aid kit or like a flame grenade. Like which one of those which one of those is the right call? Like those kind of choices. And then like those games will make you fucking jump out of your seat when you find an inventory upgrade. Like that's how vital the inventory is in those games, and how like well done the crafting like dilemmas are. And like what is it, like The Last of Us, I think like alcohol is used either for first aid kits or Molotov cocktails, and that is a binary ass choice you've got to make about how to best spend your alcohol when you find it. And like shivs can be used to instantly kill clickers, which is obviously valuable, but they also open doors as lockpicks. That's an interesting choice. That's where crafting is interesting, is like I got to craft my shivs and also think about how I want to use my shivs. That's all good stuff. Elden Ring is a bunch of fucking fields full of flowers you pick up 75,000 of, and then you go into a menu to turn them into the real item. And it's like, you could just give me items like you did in the last 6 games. We were fine before when you would just give me like crescent moon grass and I could eat it to heal or whatever. Like, I don't need to pick up 50 like red berries and read about how only my horse can eat them, and then be like, oh, it's horse food, I gotta craft it 1-to-1 from being not horse food into the more horsey food version of itself via a menu. And it's like, this is stupid.
That is very stupid. That's not even crafting. That's just like
there's some things that require multiple components and so on. Like there's things like this thing requires 3 things, but that just makes me more annoyed, because now if I ever need that thing, now I gotta figure out where the fuck to find, like, where was the last time I saw that specific plant or whatever. Time to go on a boring journey. And it's even weirder by the fact that like when you're doing boss runs, like when you die against something and then you respawn like at the equivalent of a bonfire, on the run back to the boss, all of the resources are back again. So if you fight a boss 20 times, you're going to pick up all the resources by just mashing Y on the way to the boss that happen to be there just over and over again.
Yeah.
Which leads to its own balancing problems, because they can be sold for the game's equivalent of souls, but also like you just have a weird deluge of that particular resource, and it's like, okay, well, like these aren't even being balanced in an interesting way about like once again, let's go like going back to like the idea of like when I talk about Dark Souls level design in The Last of Us. That is also a front to back like campaign that you play through, and so the resources are preordained. They might be doing a like adaptive difficulty, but like ultimately like there is a specific ish number of resources that spawn through the level, and you, like the only way to like even if it is randomized in some way, it only shuffles if you die and have to retry a level. Like you don't like farm the resources in The Last of Us, so your choices matter and are interesting. And like in the same thing goes for Resident Evil. Like I know that they fudge the numbers sometimes to make the game to try to get everyone to have the intended experience to some extent, but like you open a drawer and you find what's in the drawer, and then there's no more shit in that drawer anymore. Like that's the setup. But in in Elden Ring, like there's just 50 billion things to mash Y for constantly, to the point where I wish the game just auto picked up all items you walked near, because like I'm constantly crab clawing the controller so that my thumb is I put my thumb on the right joystick and my index finger on B so I can run while controlling the camera. And then I also have to figure out how to press Y at the same time constantly because there's 50 items on camera at any given time because every random flower might be an item and so on. And it's just give me items. It was fine when you would just kill a guy and then his corpse glowed and it's like, what's that glowy bit? Oh, he had 2 fire bombs. And then you could just throw the fire bombs. Like, there was I don't see any upside to besides the fact that it's just expected of open world games because Assassin's Creed poisoned everybody.
That's a downside, though. That's a downside. The fact that they're doing it because it's open world is a downside.
It's exactly what I don't want to see from them. Is I want to see them do stuff because they're reinventing the open world and like doing some like Breath of the Wild style stuff where they're like, we're gonna really reassess what the point of open world even is, and then Breath of the Wild did a lot of interesting stuff, but it also had too much crafting in it. But it did more interesting stuff with crafting than Elden Ring is, which is mostly just like exactly the kind of crafting I'm already sick of like, okay, so it's Far Cry 4, you clear out the same outpost 75 times and pretend it's new content, and like sometimes a bear shows up and if you kill 3 bears you can make a belt that gives you another inventory slot, and there's just like a shitty checklist of annoying crafting items to gather, not because they're interesting risk reward mechanics but because it's just another checklist to work on. It's like, so like the crafting system in Elden Ring it has 2 states it can exist in basically, because it's not going to make me make interesting choices. So it'll either be completely out of the way and not really matter because I can just ignore most of it, or it'll get right the fuck in my way and stop me dead in my tracks, and then I have to really engage with it in an annoying way where it's like, all right, let's checklist through where do I find that piece of grass? I gotta create 75 fucking apply holy to weapon enchantments so I can try to do attempts on this boss because that's what he's weak to. So let's farm the 3 things it takes to make that. Like, that's the 2 options. It's going to either be miserable or it won't matter. Just like bombs in Assassin's Creed Revelations, where you made custom bombs and it was a really big pain in the ass, and I beat the game without ever using one, so I just didn't learn how to do them. Like that's open world crafting. It's bad. It's bad for the reasons why I just explained why crafting's supposed to be good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it would have probably been better if your crafting resources were also tied to your death. So when you die, you have to go pick up your previously existing crafting resources.
Yeah, if you dropped
everything.
everything.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, if you dropped literally everything, I was really nervous about dying for the first time because I thought that's what happens. I was like, shit, man, I just grabbed but yeah, no, it is just like, oh, there is no, like, the first time that I actually had to lose a huge chunk of runes, I went, oh, wait, this isn't actually a loss anymore. I can get back these resources in like a few seconds, really. I can literally farm for like thousands of runes almost in less than an hour. Like runes don't mean anything to me anymore. It's
it does lead to a weird issue where I've noticed that like the drops are really low even when you defeat a boss. Like the balancing of the runes, like they clearly are expecting you to play a massive amount of this game, so they don't want to give you any of that fast. But it leads to a weird dynamic where you could just grind some mobs relatively quickly to get a amount of experience that feels comparable to an actual boss kill, and that's kind of
there's a mob that's real that you find like basically early on, and he just straight gives you 1,000 rune for killing him. And the higher level you get, the faster you can kick his ass, and you can basically just farm that guy. And you'll pretty much be like the equivalent of killing that one guy. And there's a place you can go find where there's just 2 of them, and they're much easier to kill than the one guy for 1,000, and they each give you 1,000. They're just like, you could just get 2,000 so easily. I could just sit there and keep farming 2,000 over and over and over and over again. And like, sure, at some level, someone's just gonna, you can do the thing of like, well, why would you do that? That doesn't sound fun. But if it's that easy, why wouldn't you? It almost seems like it's part of the purpose, like you're supposed to do that, because why else would they give you such an easy opportunity? And I think that's one of the I don't know, I would say one of like the crowning features of a Souls world is that you really don't want to go back, right? You don't want to walk back to anywhere or go back to any particular part once you've passed it. The idea of clearing an area is like oh, thank God, I'll never have to look at that place again. And like, but Elden Ring is very much not that. Elden Ring's very much like, oh, okay, so I could just show up here anytime I want, and especially since you can just teleport anywhere, I'll just come back here and get the stuff I need and just leave. I found a place where I can farm literally like almost 5,000 rune, and it takes a little bit because I'm a low level right now. But once I get to like probably like level 15 or 20, I can just come there and just mass farm super quick. And all right, congrats. Before, this used to be like I had to like fight 4 bosses to get to where I am now, but now I don't need to do that. Now I can just go and fight bosses. Like I could just do it what I do with every RPG, which is I can humorously walk up to them way overpowered and just like hit them twice and like, okay, wait, I don't think we're at the right level. Like the boss is just like, hold on, I think I walked into a boss fight. What happened here?
But now you also can tell if you're at the right level either way because it's an open world.
Well, that's the thing too.
I do
it's
find
like
myself always wondering whether I'm under or over leveled and what the intended experience was. Like it all feels like kind of a callback to our original experience with Dark Souls, where we heard it was hard, so we were like, this must be intentional when the game was kicking our teeth in. But we were going to the catacombs and to New Londo and not to Upper Endedburg. So and like one zone is infinitely respawning skeletons and the other one has ghosts that you can't hurt without being cursed. And we're like, I guess this is just how hard Dark Souls is because we took us like hours to notice the weird like winding path that takes you to the actual place you're supposed to start in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like this one, like you can go anywhere at any time. So it's like you do have to wonder like, am I supposed to come back later, or is this supposed to be how hard this is? And there's definitely like a question to that. And I can't help but wonder if the early game will be way too hard, and then the late game will just snowball in this way that's kind of unsatisfying, where you get so strong. And yeah, there's so much ambiguity of like, if you play through Dark Souls, you don't run past enemies. Like you run past enemies when you die. Usually when you know that you have the safety of a boss gate to run to, and you're just doing boss runs, but the act of exploring through a level of a Souls game is so treacherous that you dare not try to just run forward, because all the people that you run past will chase you, and then you'll encounter like a trap or something, or a big dude in a doorway, and you're like, fuck me, and like you're completely comically fucked because specifically you don't know what's gonna happen in the next room and the next corner and so on. Like it is this like vaguely horror like experience of tiptoeing through this thing and like checking around corners with your camera and hoping no monster closets are going to hop out and get you and so on. And like Bloodborne conditions you to do that, where they'll fucking have a guy just standing around a corner waiting to jump out at you when you try to walk past the corner, and then right after that they'll do it again. Fuck you. like that's the point. So you don't run past stuff in Dark Souls games until you already know the entire level and have like cleared it of all of its items and basically killed everything once essentially and spent the souls that you got as a reward. Then people tend to run past stuff because they're like, okay, I know my perfect red I can do to get back to fucking Ludwig faster or something. But in this game, it's like the whole world is just infinite enemies, and it's like that leads to a massive disparity in the potential implied experience you're supposed to be receiving, because like, am I supposed to just walk through this area and literally kill hundreds of enemies taking hours and be level 30, or am I supposed to ride past them all on my horse and be like, see ya suckers, I'm just mashing the pick up flowers button, I'll see you at the next checkpoint, and then you save combat for when you actually end up in a real dungeon. Those two people are going to be massively different levels, and I don't know which one's right. And one of them is more right, like the intended like power curve, and I can't tell.
That's the feeling I had. Like I ran into a boss that I beat on my first attempt, and I kind of felt like I bullied him, and I was like, oh wait, was I supposed to come fight this guy earlier, or am I doing something wrong to be too high of a level by the time I encountered him? And he's not in front of he's still in the starting zone, I guess you could call it, but he's not like, he is after a well amount of encounters, right? He's not just like, ooh, I stumbled upon him pretty early on. Like, this is somebody you would find, like, he's hidden in a little nook and cranny far off in the nowheres. And you're like, oh, okay. So outside is like, okay, well, this is a pretty okay fight to get into this little cave to fight him, so it must be kind of important. But like then you stomp him and you're like, I don't know what I did right. Like, am I good at the game? Am I over level? Like, is he just not really supposed to be a threat? I don't know. I don't really get the feeling anymore. And I think there's a big difference between the feeling we had, like you're talking about, from when we first played Dark Souls, of like, is this just hard, or or are we in the wrong place? Versus like, I genuinely don't know if I'm making a mistake in how I'm playing the game. I don't know if I'm being too proactive on going after like not non-boss hard fights and trying my best to like kill as many difficult enemies because I know they pay out high, and then just leveling up really quickly and just assuming that is going to lead me to a higher chance of victory on fights. And so far it has been successful to do that. But can I keep the scale up? Can I, like, what is going to be the threat when I eventually reach a main boss, I guess you could say, like a story related boss? And it is literally just a pathetic clap. Like the boss is just like, oh my God, oh, please just fucking leave. I'm so sorry. And you're just like, you're like a rabid animal walking into a cave and just like killing everything. It's just, and I don't know. I guess I'm curious to see as I play more of it, but so far, this has been the easiest Souls game I've ever played. Like I am having, it is literally just a walk in the park. You are learning
from game to game, but also this is I think I'm noticing this one, not only do you have like some of the buttons you would want to have, like just having a jump button and so on, that probably would be easier sell for you, but also I feel like stamina is way less limiting than normal in this game. Or
wow, stamina is very generous. No, I've noticed stamina is very generous from like previous Souls games, because the moment I saw the stamina
complaint about the franchise is like you like Sekiro because it didn't have a stamina meter, and this one definitely hits me less. The primary, it's almost like with almost any boss fight, if I'm just swinging my weapon and dodging around, I almost never run out of stamina. It's the moment I block something, then it's just like, fuck, that's just all gone, and you're like, no.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, again, I've been pretty hard playing Sekiro lately, and I've kind of like, Sekiro has taught me a valuable lesson in two things. One is how to do perfect blocks, and two is that sometimes you just need to be really, really cognitive or conscious of when to dodge. If you know exactly when to dodge something, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what your approach is. As long as you just dodge right at the right time, you can get some really good hits in. And Dark Souls enemies are notoriously good at being like, hey, by the way, I'm gonna do something, and you can just dodge. And especially this game, if you just dodge right, you just stand two-handed and just be like, I'm gonna slap your ass, and then I'm gonna roll back when he does the like inevitable counter turnaround. Like, I did a big attack, now I'm gonna hit you from behind. You're like, yeah, but I already stabbed you. And I'm gonna roll, and I'm gonna wait, and I just stand there. I just stand and wait for the enemy to come at me. And if it's like a constant swing, okay, roll a couple of times back. If it's just a one big swing, just roll forward at him and then hit him in the ass and then roll away. But I never run out of stamina, because I don't feel the need to keep like swinging flaily or need to do anything, because I don't know. I know I'm not going to run out of stamina. And all these bosses are mostly just big swinging arcs. They're just a lot of. I've ran into one boss so far that's like kind of unreasonable.
I've seen some dark shit. I'm so mad at some of the things I've seen.
Yeah, I've ran into a boss that literally is just like, okay, well, this is gonna take some like next level strats or something. Like,
I've definitely given up on some things and I'm like, I'll be back later. I'm not dealing with this.
Yeah, like I ran into a boss that one-shot me no matter what I did. If I dodged, if I blocked, if I and no matter what I did, it would kill me in one shot. And I was like, oh, okay, well, you know what? I'm just not going to touch you then. I'm going to come back and I'm going to make you wish you didn't do that.
Yep.
But there's definitely so many bosses I've run into that, yeah, again, the stamina meter's too big. And so I can very easily, like you talk about, I can very easily just dodge, hit, dodge, and then wait, dodge, hit, dodge. and I don't care how long it takes. There's no timer on this game. It's not like I've got 30 seconds to beat a guy before before I die. So if I'm sitting there and I'm only doing like two-handed heavy hits once and then rolling back, okay, I'm still gonna get through the boss. I'm still going to win, and then I don't know. It's weird. It's weird when I compare it to like Dark Souls.
I've definitely seen where all the negative reviews came from, because
what, the first guy you encounter in this game?
Yeah, no, I was having a great time with this game, and it's been running fantastically, except for this one place that has like a storm effect happening that makes me chug a bit. But like I chugged once and turned the game to medium, and it was like, whatever, I'm over it, and I didn't even notice the visual change. So I'm like, cool, the game runs great, I'm having fun. Everyone was like, oh, don't get the PC version, it's gonna die on you, and I'm like, the game's running great, whatever. Then like 10 hours in, I finally come back to the beginning of the game where there was a dude that I saw, and I'm like, that guy looks very dangerous. I'm going to just not walk up to him because it's an open world, and I'm level 1. And so I came back hours and hours later, and I tried fighting that guy, and I got him eventually, but holy fucking shit, the game does not work there. And it's right, it's like the first major encounter of the game. That's like when you need the most polish ever is the on-ramping experience. It's like, no wonder there's like 100 Steam reviews, and like it's like where it's like the game's like mixed on Steam last I checked. And there's so many negative reviews because everyone's like, I gotta get out and refund the game before like I get past the threshold where you can't refund it. Like the beginning of a Steam game is so important, and having that the game just shit itself literally on the front step of the open world is so bad. I also don't really like the fight very much, but more than anything is the fact that it so blatantly doesn't work. Like it's the game. It's like they slice the world into a series of loading chunks or something and put a boss fight right on the seam, and it's like that would be a bad mistake ever. It's a huge mistake on what's essentially the first boss of the game, as much as you can even claim there is any, because it's an open world game. But he's right there. Like,
yeah, he's technically the first like titled character you're gonna run into. Like,
but even worse, I did this in one episode. In the opposite direction from the beginning of the game is another boss. And that one, I had the headache of it getting stuck on geometry, and like it's doing all this ambitious shit as being this big interesting boss, but like the way it's just shitting itself, interacting with the world over and over again, to the point where at one point it teleported back to its spawn, and I'm like, no, this was really cool at first, but this is an incredibly rough fight, and those are the two most likely first encounters somebody will have. And it's like, yeah, I can see where all the negative reviews are coming from. I started this game by just fucking leaving.
Yeah, me too.
So I wasn't here. I did other shit instead. But like both of those fights are two of the worst fights I've seen in the game, and one of them is really disappointing because it's a really cool fight, but it doesn't work. That's a real bummer. I would be interested to find out, and we won't, because it's a Japanese company. They don't fucking tell you anything ever. They're like, I would be convinced that they literally just execute all their employees after every game and hire new ones, because like nothing comes out of Japanese companies about how the fuck development went. But like, I would love to know how the fuck that happened, because like they know they have to, like it's common basic knowledge that like ever since like, you know, like the fucking BioShock demo back in the day, like the fucking like cinematic, like the beginning of a game is so crucial to hooking people, and having the first major encounter of the open world of Elden Ring be so hilariously bad is, I don't know how that happens. And I'm so confused. Like, what last minute choice happened, or like did the optimization just fucking tank in the last week before the game came out, and there's like, oh fuck, like we can't fix this in time, we'll hope we can do it in time. Or like, did they move where the game started? Like was the original spawn point where the game starts in the open world literally somewhere else until recently? Like I'm so curious.
I have no idea how it got that bad, but yeah, I've definitely experienced multiple times.
I literally lured him to a place that ran better.
Did you really?
Yes.
I thought about like maybe I should lead him away, But then I thought like, well, I don't know, like, is that he's obviously here for a reason. I'm supposed to fight him here, but yeah, like every time I try fighting him, it would just something would like at the crucial moment it'd be like it'd like hiccup at some point. I'm like, oh,
no,
this,
I lured
no,
him
I can't.
towards the next bonfire, and if I fought him by that, it ran great. But it was really
I might
goofy.
try
It
that.
was so
like,
fucking goofy that it works that way.
Yeah, like
there literally is just like a danger zone, and it's the middle of his boss arena, and it's just like, fuck you.
That's weird.
Yeah, no, there's definitely I've tried him like 3 times now, and I basically have given up and be like, I'm just gonna leave him alone. He could just sit there and I'll come back and like mess with him later. But
between that and the ability to have fights where just random assholes aggro on you when you're fighting a boss fight, there's a lot of reminders of why there was an appeal to fighting people in a boss arena in all of the other games.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's something I didn't think I would, but I really kind of miss being able to just like know it's time to fight a boss. There's a sense of like Souls games are a lot about planning and strategizing, right? It's supposed to be like boss fights are supposed to be the test after you've taken after you've done all the homework to get there. And it when you run into one right as you start the game, your immediate thought is, should I have known something before coming here? Was I supposed to know how to play this game? And it's not even like there's a difference between like, oh yeah, there's a difference between a feeling of like, oh yeah, you should know that you're not supposed to be able to fight this enemy, and wow, like I hope I read the marketing material, or else I'd be like super confused how the fuck I was supposed to fight this guy. Like, and it's, I don't know, it's funny because there's a pretty much dead ass similar fight in Sekiro, but somehow Sekiro did this fight way better, and somehow it was
Sekiro was an open world.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like even the
very
area,
carefully
like,
little curated levels, and so every single, even the mini bosses had like a really specific location they were in that gave you space, even if it felt like more of an organic surprise.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
Elden Ring wants to surprise you.
Yeah, Elden Ring does want to surprise you. But
there's a lot of boss health bar. Oh, this is happening. Oh, this is a bad time. I have 3 giants, and for some reason 75 rams chasing me. I can't do this right now. I had one surprise boss fight for some reason. All of nature was attacking me, and I wasn't sure why. and I fought it again later. So no, it wasn't the boss fight. It wasn't like a mechanic. I just somehow like all of nature was mad at me, and all of it was chasing me simultaneously. And I mean like the parts of nature that aren't like villains.
Yeah,
like,
the
why
non-aggressive.
is this happening?
Freaking grass attacking you.
I can't fight 30 things at once. What?
That's pretty good. As I play more, I'm more curious to see the philosophy or the design. I'm just really curious why they chose to make it this way. Like, was it easier? Was it?
I mean, the payoffs. There is a real payoff in that. It really works sometimes. These like moments of just where you just see something and you're like, oh, fuck. And that wouldn't be quite the same way if you could obviously tell mechanically, like video games have design to them that is very obvious sometimes. Like when you go through that one settlement in The Last of Us 1, there's a lot of chest high walls while you're like hanging out, talking to people about their cool hangout that they have. And like, wow, yeah, maybe we can live here in a peaceful place where nothing will ever go wrong, as you're walking by a bunch of chest high walls that look a lot like cover that you snap to. And you're like, huh, is this conversation going to end with this place being attacked and me fighting back to the level I just walked through? I could never guess that might happen. Yeah. And then that happens.
I don't know.
That also is just the remnants of the design of the gameplay mechanics, because it's like
it's what happens when you try to walk and talk through a Mario level, and you're like, well, it's a Mario level. I'm pretty sure I'm going to jump through this later.
Yeah, but if The Last of Us could mechanically integrate its cover system into normal looking worlds instead of having, have chest high walls neatly placed. Of course, doing that is very difficult because of the animations and all the stuff that the Last of Us does. but it's not necessarily dependent on. It's it can work. I understand what you say. I suppose it works sometimes because of that. You guys haven't mentioned something though that I think is bad, but I don't know. Andrew,
maybe because we're intentionally not mentioning it if it's spoilery.
No, it's not spoilery.
Yeah, is it a spoiler? Okay. What's the question?
Have you fought a boss in the middle of the open world in Elden Rings?
What does that mean? That the whole game's in middle of the open world.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry. What I mean to say is that imagine the Capper Demon and how it's reused later on in Dark Souls.
Oh, you mean when a boss is also a normal enemy?
Mm-hmm. Does that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which means you will inevitably, or not inevitably, but you may. It may happen that you fight the normal mob before you actually fight the boss.
Yeah.
Because it's an open world game.
Yeah,
no, that will happen.
Yeah, it is possible.
To everyone except me.
Everyone
Oh,
except
damn.
you.
There's a large reoccurring normal enemy that is all over the place in that game. But the first time I encountered him was a boss. But that was because I went in an incredibly specific direction that no one else would have taken.
That's why I'm asking, because I saw Andrew fight the monster.
You can't tell me that guy's a boss. That guy better not be a fucking boss. Are you kidding me? That guy's fucking pathetic. He's a boss?
You don't know.
He was my first boss fight that I killed, and I'm like,
what?
But he's like everywhere as a normal enemy. I didn't know that, so I was like, I guess I got the good experience. Because
that's the guy I was talking about. You could just farm him for 1,000 runes.
It'd be way more disappointing to go into a place and be like, oh, it's that regular enemy, but they're calling it a boss, which is a thing that like some games do, including even some of the Souls games have done, like especially Bloodborne's Chalice dungeons were just like a weird mess of like you'd fight 3 of the same giant on the way to like a boss fight against that giant, and it's like because it was randomly generated. There's definitely some of that. Like there's no escaping it. Like Elden Ring has padding and it has like recycled content and it has like it respects your time less than the rest of the franchise does. Like it is not the masterfully paced, beautiful, crafted game that I've come to these for, which is my original complaint. Like I can still say it's doing a lot of really cool shit for an open world, and I'm gonna have fun with it and not be bored the way I am with Horizon Zero Dawn and Ghost of Tsushima. But it is not that carefully crafted tight thing. It is you'll fight that guy, but now he has a different health bar, which means it's different somehow. Like that will happen. And pick 75 flowers that are all the same. Like
I'm confident in that fight now. I think I can win that one.
I fought him before I knew how to level up yet.
Holy shit! I mean, to be fair, I also fought him before I knew how to level up, but not the boss.
I fought the boss.
Yeah, I fought the regular mob.
You can watch me just learn for 20 minutes. It's a pretty satisfying little curve of me like adapting and like getting into the groove and so on. But anyway, it's about time to call it. That's our spoiler-free as best as you can early look at Elden Ring, I guess. And it was a sandwich. It was sandwiched around an hour and a half of Fallout ranting.
Yeah,
this is a weird podcast.
A very open world podcast, if you will.
Yep. Yeah, it was just like my Let's Play. Just wherever the fuck it feels like. Send your questions to dialogchoicespodcast@gmail.com. It's dialogue is spelled like in the title of this, not like the other way you can spell it. They're both real. Shut up. See you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.